Hello. This week I felt compelled to speak on the subject of suicide. We recently had a family member transition and she died by way of suicide. My eldest sister transitioned in 2018 and she died by suicide. In 2016, I myself tried to take my own life. I know that it is a very difficult subject to speak about. My belief as I continue to work with individuals who are suicidal, continue to witness young people and all kinds of people take their own lives. And because of some of what I'm privy to in some of the private sessions that I have with clients, I know that we can no longer keep certain things secret. We can no longer be secretive about issues such as this, because the truth is that the problem isn't with the suicidal individual. The problem is with families or communities and societies. It's only that individuals who are usually very gifted and highly sensitive people are the ones that are carrying emotionally, spiritually, physically, and mentally the burdens of what society refuses to look at, what society refuses to acknowledge, and what society refuses to take on. What a lot of people aren't aware of is that when someone tries to take their life, they have been contemplating it for a long time. And often it seems like the easy way out, but there is nothing. As someone who has experienced an intimacy with suicide ideation, I understand that it's not something that is easy to come to. It's not something that anyone willingly wants to do. Change. I've always been a very optimistic, happy, joyful, self-satisfied person. I've always been super positive. I wasn't a pessimistic person by any degree. I wasn't a negative person, and I was definitely not a depressed person. Looking back now, the repression of secrets, of betrayals, and in some instances of criminal acts, I have been the individual who has seen it through my psychic eyes, who has felt it, who has felt disturbed by it, and who has felt a sense of we need justice in certain cases. And this has been since I was as young as 6. There are usually one or a few within families. There might be one within a nuclear family. There might be a few within the greater family. That was part of what I was carrying that I didn't realize I was carrying. And part of that also is ancestral traumas, things that we come in with through our DNA, through our cellular memory. Those individuals are sometimes called generational curse breakers. They are here to dissolve those patterns, to dissolve certain injustices, to transform the negative. within a lineage. When I began to break was when I experienced a sexual trauma when I was raped as a young virgin at 15 years old. And slowly, without realizing, I began to change. I began to have a poisonous mind in the way that I spoke to myself. I noticed that I began to resent looking at myself in the mirror. The trauma then began to pile up as the years gone by. I began to struggle in how I interacted with friends, so my relationships and friendships began to fall apart. I had this experience. I tried to tell someone, and they didn't believe me because this man was so charming and so handsome, and just seemed like such a beautiful soul, which I'm sure he was. Beautiful souls do bad things all the time. You know, that's the nature of being here, and this is what we're all needing to heal from now by being able to have difficult conversations, by facing things. From that day, because of that reaction, I then never told anybody else for a very, very long time. And so now I'm trying to keep this massive secret that feels like it's just plastered on my forehead. I'm trying to keep this experience to myself. I'm trying to make sure that I don't get found out. I'm trying, as this young teen, you know, trying and hoping that nobody sees just how much pain I'm in, just how much I dislike myself. I then later in my early 20s began self-sabotaging. I was not going to varsity. I'd miss classes, I'd sleep for hours, and began a very destructive relationship with food. And interestingly, I remember when that was ignited, and I'd had a surgery in my breast to take out a cyst, which we later found was benign. But something after that, a session with a friend and food and lots of snacks, I discovered, whoa, there is this place where I can get this rush and joy, and from all these chemicals and things in this junk food. That's why we call it junk. I became almost a junkie, right? The behavior I had and the relationship that I formed was hiding so many other things that I would only later in my late 20s would begin to discover and uncover. I'm sharing, wanting to mirror to you how maybe some of the behaviors and habits you have, where some of them might stem from, and how slowly suicide begins to call for us. When I was bunking varsity and I was eating myself until I was completely numb and really, really wanting to disappear, that was the first time that suicidal thoughts came to me. It was almost like this foreign cloud of thoughts that came to me and landed on me, and I was like, what's that? I kind of put it away. And what I'm saying is that I knew that it wasn't an option. It wasn't my option. It wasn't my option. And I remember during that time when things were really, really dark for me, I tried to fight it off. I tried to fight those thoughts off. No one really noticed that my behavior had changed. No one really reached out and maybe, directed me towards a psychiatrist or a practitioner that would help me get out of that dark place. Essentially, I went through this period on my own. I was still young and ambitious and excited about becoming this adult and life. So, I at some point went and lived in another country. I came back. In 2013, I began to get physically sick with debilitating migraines. I went to a physician that year and was given medication and began to treat it from a very Western medicine point of view. Like, my body is sick, this thing that is not me, that is removed from me, is sick and I need to make it better. And so I need to take medication type of approach. And I'm trying to feel that I'm just not myself anymore and I can't pretend. At the end of 2014, 2015, I began to sleep and I'd sleep for hours. So when I wasn't at work over the weekend, I'd sleep for hours. I was in a space that I just didn't understand. At that time, we didn't have a lot of information on mental health, depression, and things of that nature. And I just didn't think that's where I was. And so I just kind of carried on in the new way of doing my life, which was sleeping a lot, not eating. But when I did eat, gorging on things that were just not good for me. And in some ways, that's what addiction is. It's a slow suicide. It's a wanting to erase yourself slowly, slowly, slowly. That's what I was trying to do, also trying to build this fortress around myself. I penned an email to my mother, my sister, and my father and told them that I was quite worried about myself. This is how I have been living in the last couple of years. And I'm worried that, something might happen. They responded with a sense of urgency. And then later on, it kind of died down. And I just felt so alone. I didn't know who else to turn to because, yeah. But I know that I was at least grateful that I had said something to someone because now the suicidal thoughts had begun to visit me more. It was such an effort to live, to get myself out of bed, to get myself clean. And once I was up, I'd go into that mode, into the robot, into the avatar, into the machine, and do the things and smile and hello, be that sunshine that I've always been. And then by the time that I got home, I just collapsed because, first of all, pretending is tiresome. And that is a symptom of depression, actually. Is us killing ourselves off to try and fit in. It got to a point where I began to have some dreams, some vivid dreams that pointed me towards the direction that I took to heal, which was healing by way of indigenous knowledge systems, healing by living the ways of my ancestors, and by healing myself with a traditional healer who used natural ways to bring me back to life. I had spent thousands of rands on trying to get better, going to neurosurgeons to try and check what was happening with my head and my headaches. The dreams that I began having then led me to where I healed completely without taking one pill. Suddenly, nothing came out of that experience, and I just became to die essentially inside, up until the point where I gathered as many pills as I could find and took the pills and said my goodbyes spiritually. I survived my attempted suicide and was then taken to a mental health facility for 2 weeks, which completely changed my life. I met people in there who would give me the courage and the insight. I resigned from work shortly after leaving the hospital and my journey began. And I've essentially been on that journey since, and that is the journey that led me to being a healer, to being an artist, and to being a mystic and transformation guide, which is the work that I'm doing now. I want to share you a text from the Bible. Now, for me, the Bible is a metaphysical book, and the Bible teaches us about morals, values. It teaches us about our subconscious mind, our unconscious mind, our nature, our feminine nature, our divine nature. When you think about Adam, the masculine, when you think about Eve, the feminine, and when you think about the fall of man, it's the fall of consciousness, right? Which was what has led us to where we find ourselves now with suicide, depression, and the state of the world. So I just felt like I need to preface that before I read this, because I know some of the trauma that a lot of people hold around religion, organized religion. And so for me, as during part of my healing, I was told to go and buy a Bible. So there's a passage I want to share with you, and I'm sharing it with you if you are going through something similar that I have, or if you know a family member who's going through something similar to what I'm sharing about today. I have my pressed geranium flower as my bookmark. I'm sharing from Psalms 23. The Lord, our shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He lets me rest in fields of green grass and leads me to quiet pools of fresh water. He gives me new strength. He guides me in the right paths as He has promised. Even if I go through the deepest darkness, I will not be afraid. Lord, for You are with me. Your shepherd's rod and staff protect me. You prepare a banquet for me where all enemies can see me. You welcome me as an honored guest and fill my cup to the brim. I know that Your goodness and love will be with me all of my life, and Your house will be my home as long as I live. Based on my own life experience, based on what I observe from some of the conversations I have with my nieces and my nephews who are struggling so much, a lot of why we're sick and why we're witnessing such an increase in suicidal rates is because of the deterioration of society and communities and the world as we see it. A big thing with us as humans and with those who are depressed and struggling in life is that we forsake ourselves, we leave ourselves behind. When we hide who we truly are, we essentially allow ourselves to die. And we are here to reveal ourselves. We're not here to hide ourselves. And hiding ourselves begins this dis-ease within the mind, the body, the emotions, and the spirit. The thing is that communities, families, and societies are the ones that are meant to show us who we are. And how do we reveal ourselves if we haven't even had positive feedback and guidance that shows us who that is? And that's the responsibility of the circles. The first circle, which is our nuclear family, the greater family, the community, our neighbors, society. That's the responsibility of us to each other. But I think that a lot of people have forgotten that. A lot of people have forgotten that we belong deeply to each other, and it's our responsibility to care for ourselves, for each other, for the land. And the way in which I was healed was that I was taken back to this truth. We are some of the first generations that have almost cut ourselves off from ceremony and initiation and rites of passages. And whether we're Indian, Chinese, black or white, rites of passages are part of our indigenous nature, our indigenous hearts, and our indigenous cultures. Certain races or certain cultures are so far removed from the indigenous teachings and wisdoms and practices of their ancestors that they themselves even believe themselves not to have any. And so does a lot of us as humanity. The fact that we've lost the practice of initiation, which is to take the child and initiate them, so the child, the late teen, who will soon be a teenager, needs to be prepared to transition, and the elders are the ones that prepare them. So umemulo here in South Africa and bar mitzvah in Jewish traditions is an example of preparing the child to become and to transition into the teenager as they step into the next phase of their life. And then that happens again. 21 is a big number and observed and understood in most parts of the world. But that in itself is another initiation. And it's not to be initiated into a fancy car, which is what culture, the entertainment culture, teaches us, right? In mass media. Some of you will remember Sweet 16, the television show on MTV, which so many kids watched, that created a false sense of reality and expectation to their parents, because that's not life, that's not real. But sometimes we think that initiation and growing up means that we have to attain something. So it's about re-attaining resources, material goods, or we have to look a certain way. We then transform ourselves into a resource as well. If you're a girl and you're now maturing in age, then you need to appear a certain way so that you can appeal to the opposite sex. And these are distorted versions and teachings that we give our young people. And that's part of what adds to the illness that we see plaguing society. We're supposed to share with each other. And we've normalized this idea that mine, it's my money, it's my house, it's mine. And the thing is that we all have different gifts. We all have different resources. So one person might have financial resources, one might have emotional resources, and that might be, the uncle or the aunt or the grandmother or whoever has that capacity, the emotional capacity to hold the family members, right? And others are able to hold them in the sense of teaching them. We bring different things to each other, and none is above the other. And it is our responsibility to help each other rise. But we've forgotten this. And so a lot of people suffer on their own because the circle is no longer there. The circle where grandmother was, where my drunk uncle, who is wild, but he's so wise and so open-minded and so accepting, where everyone is there and we belong to each other and we pour into each other and we share energy with each other, and no one is elevated to a certain status because they, according to the world, are worthy of that status. Native Americans have what is called the medicine wheel, which is indigenous medicine. The medicine wheel teaches us to honor all of the directions. It teaches us to honor the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, and the physical body. Because when those are out of alignment, the human that is holding the soul within this body suffers. Which is why in the courses and the sessions that I have with individuals, that is the basis of the foundation of my work, the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical aspects of an individual. The medicine wheel teaches us about economical education, cultural education. It teaches us about financial education. And again, so many young people are left behind because no one is teaching us these things. No one's teaching us how the economy of the home is supposed to work, the economy of society is supposed to work. Because whether we like it or not everybody can do everything. Some people aren't meant to be in 9-to-5s or in the economical system because they're just not built for that. Maybe we're not all the same, but we're trained in the same way, and we're all trained to follow a specific direction, which isn't fair, and it isn't what is life and what is true. And we know what is true by simply looking at nature. Imagine if all the ants, imagine if all the wildebeests and the bears and the bees and the birds and the antelopes all decided to go in one direction. The ecosystem would collapse, and that's what's happened to us. We have all been trained to go in a specific direction, to see the earth as a resource, And so now we're seeing ourselves and each other as resources and as some sort of race towards something and some sort of climb up some ladder that is illusionary. What the medicine wheel and what indigenous knowledge systems teaches us is that we respect the land we are on. And the greatest violence is to take people off of the land, because it then cuts them off their hearts, their spirits, their emotional body, their mental body, everything, the faculty in which we receive ourselves and everything that we receive the Most High is through this land. And so when we don't respect the land, how can we even begin to respect ourselves and each other? If we just litter or we just mine her, how will we not do that to each other? Of course we're going to mine each other and use each other as a means to an end. There are individuals within our communities who know the truth of how things should be. They've always known it since they were children, from the core of their beings, that we're supposed to care for each other, look out for each other, that we're supposed to share, that we're supposed to look after the animals, that we're supposed to say thank you when we take the plants out of the ground so we can heal ourselves, that we're supposed to ask for permission, because everything in nature is a living entity, just as we are. These individuals take on all of the comatoseness, if that's a word, our sleepiness, our heartlessness, our not being able to see-ness, our blindedness, trying to educate us about suicide, those who choose to live in that way. And maybe we can be compassionate about why they chose to leave. We can be compassionate towards those who struggle to make sense of this world. Maybe we can remove judgment and have a drink. I know this is crazy for me to say, but have a drink with the alcoholic or the homeless guy down the road that you always pass, because they might tell you and teach you something that you need to know about this world and about life. I've had alcoholic uncles. A lot of them are gone now. And I know that all they needed was to be heard and to be seen and not to be told to stop drinking. They know very well they need to stop drinking. But how does one cut off the thing that gives them a reason to stay here, a reason to wake up when they've been written off already? Suicide is us ignoring each other when we need each other. Suicide is festering greed and guilt and shame that we also inherit from our familial systems and from the system that has set up crazy beauty standards, crazy standards to live by, life standards, and crazy standards that determine what is success and what is not, who is worthy and who is not, who is smart and deserves to be heard in a room that makes decisions that affect us all, and who is not. Suicide are those smaller things that culminate in the generational curse breakers. Some of them are called the dark sheep within families, the activists, the highly sensitive people that are like sponges that take in energetically all of the energies and the gunk of the world that people refuse to see and to touch and to acknowledge. Those that take that. That's what suicide is, you know. I guess the last thing I would want to say is what to do when you're suicidal. Knowing what I know now, one thing I know sometimes is that you have no energy for anything, to even wash yourself, wash your teeth. try to go outside. Even if you just take a mat and you're going to put it outside and you're going to do what you were doing in your room, sleeping in a dark room. Because I know the darkness sometimes is what we want. To just go and lie outside so that at least you have vitamin D and you have the sun to put in codes of new codes within you, codes of hope. Go outside so the wind can do her magic and wipe off what needs to be wiped off. And I know this sounds woo, but that's just how it works. So it's very much woo. But go outside so that at least you have contact with what's true. A lot of suicidal people isolate themselves, and sometimes they isolate themselves because they've already been isolated to some degree, in the sense of maybe having not been accepted for who they are and having survived certain things that traumatized them and isolated them from themselves internally to begin with. Feel the sun, listen to the birds, watch the clouds pass by, and do that, and just tell yourself that that is medicine that you're going to give yourself consistently, no matter what. Barefoot. Because even if we don't believe or trust it, nature is the original healer, the great healer, the ultimate healer. And then the second thing that I would say is talk to someone. As hard as it is, go towards the person that you feel safe with and say, you know what, this is what I'm feeling. Not all of us have these people. Not all of us feel confident enough to share that because we feel shame. We feel like we'll be judged, that we're not good enough. That's fine, because now we're recognizing that it's not your sickness, it's not you. You are carrying symptoms of the society, the family. When you're suicidal, it's so dark. It's so dark that sometimes even talking to someone, people will say things that actually make things darker. But admit and accept where you are. Accept where you are, and instead of trying to climb out of the hole and just making it a deeper hole, just sit there and ask the darkness within that hole what it's trying to tell you. What's here? What's eating me? And don't be afraid of what comes up. It's not going to kill you. In fact, it might begin to create other avenues in which you can begin to find a way out, or to find a pathway towards who you really are. It's that thing again about being willing to reveal ourselves to ourselves. And sometimes those revelations are about, saying, I don't like who I've become. I'm not me. I don't like where I am in life. Sometimes it's enough to just give yourself permission to accept the things that you cannot change. Allow yourself to believe yourself that you are sad. If you felt certain things within your family growing up, if you were bullied, whatever it is, allow yourself to see that. You be the person at least who you can tell, who can believe you, and who can begin to guide you towards your own healing, because the healer is within ourselves. Because depression is also wanting to be somewhere where you're not. So allowing yourself to say, this is where I am and I accept it. I don't like it. It makes me anxious. It makes me ashamed, but this is what it is at this moment. And once you fully accept what that is, then you'll be guided to the next moment. I want to share with you something short from A Way of Being Free by Baba Ben Okri. This sharing is from page 40. The human race is not yet free. The worst realities of our age are manufactured realities. It is therefore our task as creative participants in the universe to redream our world. The fact of possessing imagination means that everything can be redeemed. Each reality can have its alternative possibilities. Human beings are blessed with the necessity of transformation. If the things we face are greater and more important than the things we refuse to face, then at least we have begun the re-evaluation of our world. At least we have started to learn to see and live again. But if we refuse to face any of our awkward and deepest truths, then sooner or later, we are going to have to become deaf and blind. And then, eventually, we are going to have to silence our dreams and the dreams of others. In other words, we die. We die in life. Thank you for your time. Ngiyabonga, ngiyaleboga. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Maitabasa. Bedankt. I'll see you when I see you. Much love.